Welcome back to FryMinis. I'm Eric, and today in our Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft coverage, we're going to take a look at horror monsters. So, Van Richten's contains many really cool stat blocks for lots of really awesome monsters, but we're not looking at those today. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into the Creating Horror Monsters section. It talks about reflavoring existing monsters to make them spookier and how to lean in on the scariness of an existing monster. It sounds cool, so let's just jump right in. For adventurers who regularly face terrifying monsters, it's easy for familiarity to sap the frightfulness from terrible foes. Restoring mystery and menace to even the most ordinary monsters can be a simple matter, though, and enhances the atmosphere of horror adventures. 6 simple techniques can transform a stat block straight out of the monster manual or other source into a horror to haunt your character's dreams. Monstrous origins. Monsters in Ravenloft can be every bit as unique as player characters. Notorious monsters. A monster is more frightening when its reputation precedes it. Describing monsters. Give yourself permission to dwell on a monster's descriptions. Monstrous tactics. Monsters that fight dirty or in particularly fearsome way may have more impact. Monstrous traits. Simple tweaks to a monster's stat block can enhance its horror. Monstrous minions. Simple traits can reflect a monster's relationship to the evil master it serves. Okay, I think this is going to be good. I love reflavoring stuff, taking existing things, tweaking it. Don't tell my players, but I often reuse a stat block from one monster to represent another. Do you really want to have a goblin fight, but your players are all level 10 and the goblin isn't even worth fighting anymore? Just use a stat block of something else and just describe it as a goblin. A variety of explanations, from transformative curses to magical experiments, can justify the appearance of a unique individual with unusual traits. In the same way, monsters in Ravenloft don't need to be members of a species or society. You can have a vicious marrow living under a bridge or a Yuan-ti abomination Dark Lord without having to explain marrows as a species or the nature of all Yuan-ti in the setting. Monsters can be one-off flukes of nature or the products of insidious magic. For significant adversaries, use the tables in the Genres of Horror section of Chapter 2 to inspire you as you craft a monster's unique details. When it comes time for the final confrontation, it might not matter whether that bridge-haunting marrow was the product of an amoral experiment to infuse Piscean traits into a soldier, or the result of someone drinking from a spring tainted by demon's blood. The marrow stat block remains the same. But those different origin stories suggest completely different paths for adventurers to follow when investigating the creatures and ensuring nothing like it ever returns to be a menace again. I like that. It ties us back to the whole notion of nightmare logic. Just things just sometimes are. Just period. Every monster tells a story. The more you treat monsters as unique individuals and foreshadow their threat, the larger they'll loom in the characters' minds. Build dread by giving monsters reputations that suggest their form, deeds, or peculiarities while letting players' imaginations embellish details. For example, tales describe a horrifying skeletal figure that corrupts the land wherever it walks. Its habit of whistling cheerfully while committing brutal acts is the source of its epithet, the Whistling Fiend. Characters might hear rumors of its merry tunes becoming fearful earworms for those who survive its passing. A party seeking the monster might also hear the whistling long before they confront the fiend. All the time they can guess at the nature of the enemy, but ultimately, the Whistling Fiend might be any demon or other threat you choose. The Whistling Fiend's notoriety has little to do with its stat block. It's famous because of its habits of whistling amid acts of terrible carnage. Use the tables in Chapter 4 of the Dungeon Master's Guide to help inspire similar characteristics to color a monster's notorious reputation. You got it. It's all about the theme, the atmosphere, the lore. It's building the story. It's more than just the D6 plus 2 or whatever. When adventurers encounter a monster for the first time, especially if its reputation precedes it, dwell on the description. You could tell the players that they see a marrow or hold up a creature's picture from the monster manual, but that first moment of revelation is the best time to paint a horrifying picture of the monster in the player's imaginations. In addition to the techniques described in the Running Horror Games section of Chapter 4, consider these concepts as you describe a monster. Emphasize wrongness. Focus on the features that make the creature alien, inhuman, and out of place. The Whistling Fiend looks like a humanoid skeleton dripping its own gelatinous musculature. Its skull curves to a point suggestive of a sickle. Engage all the senses. Describe elements of the creature that are likely to provoke a visceral response, such as the smell of rot that its oily flesh exudes, the whistled tune of a well-known nursery rhyme issuing from its lipless mouth, and the unnatural heat that forms ripples in the air around it. These details don't need to rely on grotesque descriptions. Sometimes it's a contrast between mundane and terrifying details that stands out, like a monster's soulful eyes or pearly teeth set amid vicious features. Make it personal. There's a fine line here. Don't dictate a character's actions in response to what they see, but you can touch on the feelings that the creature provokes, leaving it up to the players to describe how they respond to those feelings. Your gut twists in revulsion. The acrid air stings your nostrils. You're suddenly aware of how small and hollow your dreams are in a world that can spawn beings of pure evil. Those are great examples, and also one of the things I love about this book is it doesn't just say, oh yeah, describe a creature. Or list the skeleton has this has this. It's teaching us how to do it and do it well. Monsters, just like player characters, can try anything you can imagine in combat, including the full range of combat options described in the player's handbook. Monsters can use the help action to aid each other. They can grapple or shove their enemies and so on. Some monsters use these options to maximize their advantages in battle. Others use them to sow fear among their enemies, even if they're not strategically optimal choices. For example, creatures known as goblins in Cardicus and other domains are ordinary hobgoblins in terms of their game statistics, but they're known for a tactic they call feasting. They grapple their enemies and then make an unarmed attack to bite their face. These attacks aren't terribly dangerous. A hobgoblin's unarmed strike deals only 2 damage compared to the average 5 it deals with a longsword, but the face biting is much more shocking to the victim and onlookers. Monsters become more fearsome if they use tactics like ganging up on the least armored character in a party, taking the time to take bites from unconscious foes, separating party members from each other, and attacking from behind. Using these tactics judiciously, the goal is to surprise and scare the players, not to convince them what you're trying to make them fail. I love that face biting idea. Always up for reflavoring stuff, so just that unarmed attack being biting the face, I think is awesome. I'm a big proponent for shove action. I think it's great. I wish more people used it for both players and monsters. Getting somebody prone can be scary just as it is, but then if something starts biting your face, it's a whole nother story. Consider undermining players' expectations about what a creature is or can do by making tweaks to the traits in its stat block. Adding a Swagin's Blood Frenzy trait to a different monster can help it feel like a bloodthirsty horror, for example. Traits such as a Troglodyte's Chameleon Skin or a Doppelganger's Ambusher can help make a creature feel more sinister as it lurks in hiding and ambushes its foes. Some traits, such as a Night Hag's Etherealness or an Imp's Invisibility, can help a monster escape from an encounter so it can return to haunt the adventurers another day. Traits such as a Banshee's Horrifying Visage or a Black Dragon's Frightful Presence can heighten the inherent fearsomeness of truly terrifying creatures. Of course, you're not limited to the traits that appear in existing monster stat blocks, but those are a good starting point. Feel free to invent your own. See, that's more what we were just talking about. This book says, here's some examples. Here's why you want to do it. Now go and run and create. It's so good. In the Land of the Mists, many monsters serve as minions or manifestations of a more powerful villain. To reflect a minion's relationship to its Dark Lord Master or other sinister forces, add one or more of these traits to a monster's stat block. Alien Mind. If a creature tries to read the minion's thoughts, that creature must succeed on an intelligence saving throw with a DC equal to 10 plus the minion's intelligence modifier, or be stunned for 1 minute. The stunned creature can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on a successful save. Minion's Mind. The minion can't be compelled to act in a way contrary to its master's instructions. Sacrificial Minion. When the minion dies, its master regains hit points equal to 4 times the minion's challenge rating, as long as the master is within 100 feet of it. Selfless Bodyguard. When an attack hits its master and the minion is within 5 feet of its master, the minion can use its reaction to make the attack hit it instead. Telepathic Minion. The minion and his master can communicate telepathically with each other as long as they're on the same plane of existence. Those are great. Thing that you'll see time and time again. You fought your way through the castle. You're at it's time to fight the big bad boss. And it's one creature. People do it all the time. And then the action economy is just so in favor of the players that it's the most disappointing experience you can have. So by using minions, by using weaker creatures, grunts type of thing, you can turn that action economy around and divert the player's attention away from the actual boss. And here, if those minions are now able to literally sacrifice themselves to save the boss, that just reinforces that strategy. So I like it a lot. Once you've considered the techniques in this section, put them all together to create your own unique terror. If you have ideas about what you want your monster to do, write them down. Then think of what stories connect the pieces you want to use or fill in the gaps you don't know about yet. For example, perhaps you've got an idea for a troll that ambushes adventurers while they rest. Considering its origins and appearance, the troll literally being a troll isn't important to you. You're more interested in the general challenge and look for the creature. To make the troll feel more notorious, you think of what would scare adventurers, where they're vulnerable, and what they're sensitive about. You come up with an idea for a creature that can come from anywhere, maybe even within the adventurer's own gear. With the tactics and traits in mind, you think of your troll as an abductor, and you give it the grappler trait of a mimic, and the amorphous trait of a black pudding so it can sneak in anywhere. Finally, you don't think of the troll as a minion, but you give it the alien mind trait to reflect its tormented psyche. Then flesh out its story and give it a name: the Bagman. The Bagman. If I've seen one complaint about this book, it's that we don't have stat blocks for Dark Lords and for the Bagman. But guess what? It doesn't matter. The stats don't matter. The idea here is using the idea of the creature. The Bagman is an urban legend about an adventurer who sought to escape doom by abandoning his party and hiding inside a bag of holding. When he tried to leave, though, he became lost amid a constantly increasing number of extra-dimensional storage spaces. Over the time, the strange forces of this magical in-between place transformed the adventurer into a monstrous creature. Now every night, the Bagman slips out of a random bag of holding. If he doesn't find his home, he drags someone back into the bag with him and leaves behind some trinket from his hidden kingdom of lost junk. Some say that if you speak too loudly over an open bag of holding or whisper, "Follow my voice," into a magical storage space 3 times, the Bagman will come for you. Any character might know the story of the Bagman. What the Bagman is and how you use the urban legend is up to you. Is there truly a Bagman, or is he just a story? If an object vanishes overnight, or if someone finds something that isn't theirs in a bag of holding, is the Bagman to blame? Is the Bagman just a monster that preys on adventurers? Or is he the Dark Lord of his own hidden domain? The possibilities for horror adventures are endless, and nowhere, especially not in adventurer's gear, is safe. Look at that. This whole chapter, this whole section, it teaches us how to do this. Here's what you want to add. And it builds it, and it literally gives us a great example of what you can build with this kind of build your own story of a monster focus over just the raw stats. It's a great book. It's a great section. It's a great example. The Bagman sounds super spooky, and I love how it's kind of meta kind of too. So thank you to my patrons. If you're interested in supporting the channel, please consider becoming a member of the Spud Club. Please like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments what kind of creature you would build for your horror game. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.